she's like cute, attractive, and then it just switches to this. Yeah, that's Susan.
Without her having any clue as to what was going on, Issei drew his rifle, aimed it at the back of her head, and pulled the trigger. And briefly speaking of the details, but Issei used Renee's body for other means.
He then used her for other means. Killed an innocent woman, did things to her body, eats her, disposes of the body in public and gets caught for it, gets off with no consequence, profits off of it by writing books, taking interviews, gaining publicity, and all of that without any repercussions. And now he's like, oh, I can keep doing this and nothing's gonna happen to me.
Issei found it extremely hard to find any employment. And with no
Who's gonna f***ing hire you, bro? If they see on your record, this guy was institutionalized after he ate a woman's body. Sick.
Including videos of him performing badly in sports.
Oh, nah. Yeah. I don't even care that he's f***ing disabled, bro. Like,
and even eating chicken under the
Hello, YouTube. In today's video, we are going to be watching the killer cannibal who was allowed to walk free. The case of Issei Sagawa. I'm gonna show you guys what he looks like. Look at this. He already just looks weird. Oh, ew, his cock is out. This guy would eat people, and then apparently he got off scotch-free, like no consequences. But yeah, before we get into today's video, as you can see, we are on Twitch right now. We watch videos here together, we play games together. So yeah, you should like join us. And then also make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram just to stay updated on what I'm doing. All right, 3, 2, 1, captions are on.
We begin the story in Kobe, located in the Hyogo Prefecture of Japan. Born on April 26, 1949, he arrived on planet Earth only 4 years after World War II.
Nice.
But despite being born into a country that was deeply injured, exhausted, and financially poor, Issei would experience quite the opposite. He had a great childhood, which for the most part was relatively carefree. Not only did his parents love him dearly, but the family was also extremely wealthy.
This like keeps happening. It's been like a common thing where the murderer usually comes from a wealthy background. That must play a role in like why they grow up like so fucked in the head.
Issei Sagawa was the president of Kurita Water Industries, a company that nowadays has over 5,000 employees and a 200 billion yen revenue. And his grandfather happened to be a successful editor for the Asahi Shimbun, one of Japan's largest newspaper publishers. Surrounded by farms and nature, Issei experienced the simple yet peaceful way of life. But unfortunately, this didn't come without its own myriad of problems. Issei was born extremely prematurely.
Maybe they get bored.
So much
they
that
just want to fuck shit up.
Professionals didn't think he had a chance to survive. And to add to this, he also immediately developed enteritis, a small intestinal disease.
Oh.
As a result, he was short, frail, and even partially stunted, something that would carry on with him into adulthood. Issei was a very peculiar child. In first grade, he became fascinated by girls and other boys, but not in the way that you'd normally imagine. It was around this time that Issei began to fantasize about eating the thighs of his classmates.
What the fuck? Wait, as a kid, this guy was already thinking about eating his classmates?
And not only was this interest approved by both of his parents, but it would also serve him well when it came to academics. Moving into his young adulthood, he attended Wako University before moving on to Kwansei Gakuen University to obtain a master's degree in English literature. And as he aged, Issei developed a curious fascination with foreign women. This was all despite his short and frail frame. At the age of 24, and while attending his academic course at Wako University, he noticed a Western woman walk by. She was tall, blonde, and German, and a reoccurring detail, but he was particularly drawn to her thighs. One other notable detail, but she also seemed to live in the same block of apartments as his grandmother. This intrigued Issei.
Long ass head.
He knew the apartment complex very well. Oh. It was under this realization that Issei decided to break into her apartment. He would be able to escape relatively easily with thanks to his local knowledge, which was a necessary part to his plan. As
it's just so long. Fucking football, bro.
Was to kill her and run away with some of her flesh. And so, late one night, Issei crept into the woman's apartment. However, his plans were thwarted, and after accidentally waking her up, she screamed before she pushed him to the ground. Following these actions, Issei Sagawa was arrested by police before being charged with attempted sexual assault. And unknown to them, he didn't reveal his true intentions to authorities. Lucky for Issei, but with a family with never-ending pockets of money, his father paid a settlement grant to the victim in return for Issei's charges being dropped. And as a result, his criminal record remained clean. The altercation caused distress and anger within Issei's immediate family. However, the cost to his actions wouldn't fall much further than a simple slap on the wrist, and this in time would lead to terrible consequences.
Uh-oh.
On April 26, 1977, which just so happened to be his birthday, Issei left Tokyo on a flight to Paris, France. The move was academic, as while here, he wanted to complete a PhD in French literature at Sorbonne University.
And they're always so educated. I remember that in a previous case, the guy was like a pilot. They went through so much school, and then this guy now, he's like getting a PhD.
At least
like
the
what?
Japanese. And it's here, in the capital of France, that Issei Sagawa met Renee
Oh, no.
Harteveld. Originally from
She's
Holland,
pretty.
Renee was a Dutch student who had moved to Paris so she could learn French literature at Sorbonne University. Renee was an attractive woman, and standing at 5'10", she was almost 1 foot
Oh,
taller
whoa, she's
when compared
tall.
to Issei.
She's
She
my
had an
height.
interest in poetry, and likely a contributing factor to studying in Paris, but she was described as being a romantic at heart.
Yorm, thank you so much for the gifted.
With an infectious
Go.
personality carefully placed behind her soft yet contrasting eyes, she was well liked amongst her peers. Through their academic studies, Issei and Renee would slowly turn from classmates into casual friends. And although they would occasionally meet for coffee and help each other with lecture notes, there was nothing more. Now, eventually, Issei earned Renee's trust. The two began to have dinner together in their own homes while revising for their exams. And as this friendship with the beautiful Western woman blossomed, Issei was finding it more and more difficult to control his dark fantasies. At least in his own mind, he had long established that eventually he would have to give in to his desires and kill someone.
Wait, what? I just have to. I'm sorry, girl. Like, you're really cool and all, but I can't help. You have to leave. Otherwise, I'm just gonna fucking eat your thighs. I'm gonna eat your legs. Yeah.
And he'd been making gradual efforts for quite some time. While residing in Paris, Issei started to bring sex workers home to his apartment very often. And although he planned to shoot them so he could eat them, he'd always freeze up and fail to pull the trigger. Whether moving to a European city for his education was a conscious decision to fulfill his desires, or simply to accentuate them, we don't know. But it seems that the answer was both.
Bruh.
On June the 11th, 1981, Issei invited Renee over to his apartment for dinner. Wanting to do well in her studies, she agreed to do some additional work with him. Apparently, she had missed an optional assignment in translating poetry. But of course, Issei was there to help. This was their second evening in a row together, and much like the first one, this evening was rather uneventful. But unfortunately, it wouldn't remain that way,
Ooh,
as
what the
Issei
fuck?
had plans. Issei really liked Renee, but not in the conventional or orthodox way. He found her to be beautiful, and he admired her
Dude, the stark contrast between them. She's like all cute, attractive, and then it just switches to this. Yeah, that's Susan.
to be beautiful, and he admired her.
Susan ass face.
And sickeningly, he believed that by consuming her, he would absorb her energy, something which in return would provide him good health and beauty. As Renee began to work at the desk located in his living room, Issei crept away to retrieve something, all under the guise of cooking up dinner. With her back to the room, views of apartment buildings across the Parisian street complemented a cool breeze flowing through the window. And with that said, she began to translate poetry out of a book. That's when Issei silently crept up behind her.
Holy shit.
And unbeknownst to Renee, he had a rifle. Without her having any clue as to what was going on, Issei drew his rifle, aimed it at the back of her head, and pulled the trigger. As a result of his actions, he fainted immediately. After regaining consciousness, he made the decision to carry on with his plan, and briefly speaking of the details, but Issei used Renee's body for other means, before eventually cutting up and consuming multiple parts of her body. He then refrigerated
Used her for other means.
several more parts before initiating his cover-up
Jesus.
plan. Needless to say, the man was insane. But he had to be creative in order to discreetly remove Renee's body without being caught. After all, he was in the middle of an extremely busy city, quite identifiable by nature, and logistically ill-equipped. Issei was smart in his own way, but logistically speaking, he wasn't ready for this. The problem is, with Paris being so hot in the middle of June, he had to remove the body before it became noticeable. He therefore decided to buy 2 large travel bags. And 2 days after murdering Renee, he put her body inside these bags before hailing for a taxi. Located towards the western flank of Paris lies a park named Bois de Boulogne, and within this park are several lakes. Issei often visited Bois de Boulogne to walk, study and relax. And being relatively familiar with the place, he decided to get rid of Renee's body by sinking the bags in the lake. As expected, his taxi driver arrived at 8 PM. And with Issei being too frail and weak, his driver picked his bags off the ground and put them into the boot of his car. They were extremely heavy, and with twisted irony, his cab
Jesus.
driver even joked, asking if there was a human body inside it.
Like, geez, these bags are really fucking heavy. What do you have? A body in there? This fucking freak is just looking at you stone faced like...
It seemed as if Issei had miscalculated his plan, because although it was 8 PM, Paris was still drenched with daylight. This
I tried
was
to
a
make my
problem.
face
With
longer.
the sun still out and many people taking to the park, he had no way to discreetly get rid of Renee's body. And rather than head back to his apartment, he accepted the fair price and got out of the taxi with his travel bags. And needless to say, many French citizens spotted him walking around the park. To add to his scuppered plans, Issei seemed to become easily distracted. He took a few moments to take in the summer sunset. In this process, he left his bags unattended several feet behind him, and when he eventually turned around, he saw a man poking at the suitcase. "Is this yours?" the stranger asked. In which Issei replied with, "No." Moments later, the puzzled man opened one of the bags.
Oh my
A
god.
woman behind him began to scream just seconds later.
Imagine the smell,
Issei
bro.
calmly walked away as a shocked crowd began to form around the suitcase. His opportunity to dispose of Renee's body had failed, and now the question on if he would ever get caught began to plague his mind. His concerns wouldn't last very long, as only 4 days later, French authorities raided his property and formally charged him with the murder of Renee Hartfeld. Contrary to how you'd imagine a killer to react, Issei was actually relieved to have been caught. At least now, in his mind, he would be able to talk to someone about his desires. And when officers questioned him, his answer was simple and emotionless, saying, "I killed her so I could eat her flesh." As expected with cases including foreigners, a long and bespoke legal process followed. After murdering Renee and even admitting to his crimes, Issei was held for 2 years to await trial. And again, lucky for him, his wealthy father threw a lot of money into a good lawyer for his defense. But this trial would never entirely come his way, as eventually, Issei Sagawa was found to be legally insane and unfit to stand trial, and instead, the judge ordered him to be indefinitely held in a French mental institution. But this was only the beginning to a series of disappointing events. Considering the nature and accidental publicity of his crime, the story of Issei Sagawa caught a lot of attention within French media. And once the public heard he would indefinitely stay within their mental institutions, they were enraged. The French public didn't want to waste their hard-earned money or taxes on this man, and following a national outcry to
For
deport
real.
him.
I forget. Yeah, I forget. Like, if you're a citizen there, your tax dollars are going towards these people. Yeah, like taking care of them.
All of this sounds fair enough, but since he was found legally unfit to stand trial in the French judicial system, were dropped. And since they were dropped, all court documentation which held information of his crimes were both sealed, and therefore not legally allowed to be released to foreign authorities, including Japan. Unfortunately, this backed Japan's own judicial system into a corner. And since Japanese authorities had no robust case against Issei Sagawa, they had no choice but to let him walk free. Granted, he was checked into the Matsuzawa Psychiatric Hospital located in Tokyo, where he was then diagnosed with a personality disorder. But on August the 12th, 1986, Issei Sagawa was checked out of this hospital without any sufficient treatment. And, can you believe it, he has been free ever since.
Holy shit.
Issei Sagawa has been a free man, free
Ew! This is free! He ate a woman and, like, disposed of her body in public.
to walk the streets of Tokyo for 36 long years. And in that time, a lot has changed. Probably one of the only satisfying results of being allowed to walk free. But with a murderous history and being declared as insane, Issei found it extremely hard to find any employment. And with no
Who's gonna
job,
fucking hire you, bro? If they see on your record, yeah, like, this guy was hospitalized or institutionalized after he ate a woman's body. Sick.
But as his professional ambitions ground to a halt, his public image would take a new direction. And soon enough, Japanese media became interested in him. Japanese culture can often be seen as strange when compared to Western standards. And this part of the story is certainly no different. Issei's first opportunity of work arose when a Japanese publisher asked him if he could write an article about his crimes. And in return, they offered him the equivalent of $20,000.
Holy shit.
This gave Issei an idea. He was already well versed in the world of writing and literature. So, why not write a book? With this notion, he began to work on various essays, novels, and articles, making a name and an income over his own heinous crimes. He would
That's
eventually create more than
fucking
20 books.
disgusting. So not only did he, like, committed cannibalism and ate an innocent woman, he is now monetizing the crime.
Books for himself and various publishers. He illustrated
Profiting
and sold
off of
portraits
it.
of beautiful women, and he would even go on to make Lolita manga for a publisher, which in this instance was a sexual comic based off of his murder of Renee Hartfeld.
A sexual
Issei
comic?
became even more of a media spectacle after this. As time moved on, public sensitivity around his crimes dulled. He was given the opportunity to work with various video producers, which led to several videos being published, including videos of him performing badly in sports.
Oh, nah. Yeah. I don't even care that he's fucking disabled, bro. Like, he deserves to be roasted.
Badly in sports, playing Wolf in Little Red Riding Hood, and even eating chicken under the impression of being a cannibal. One of his most disturbing jobs came when he agreed to co-lead in an adult film, if you understand what I mean. The caveat to this was that he would only reveal that he was a murderer after he had sex with a woman. which surely would have caused some psychological scarring. Moving on to the more concerning elements of this story, and you've probably guessed it by now, but it ultimately appears that Issei has never learned his lesson. In fact, even to this day, he admits that he still has the urge to eat other women. In the years after returning to Japan, he often stole money from his parents in order to chase and pay women for their time.
Oh my god.
And although some clocked on to who he was, not all of them did. The lack of punishment and penalty to this man's actions is honestly mind-blowing. He has since spent many decades in his own home with his own comforts. His home is also filled with photos of his victim and the crime scene he once created.
He has pictures of the girl still that he ate, and that makes it so much worse for him, for his mental health, because he's done all of these disgusting fucking things, right? Killed an innocent woman, did things to her body, eats her, disposes of the body in public and gets caught for it, gets off with no consequence, profits off of it by writing books, taking interviews, gaining publicity, and all of that without any repercussions that like only reinforces his behavior. Now he's like, oh, I can keep doing this and nothing's gonna happen to me.
It's one of the most apathetic actions a human could do. In the more recent years, Issei Sagawa claims to have graduated from Western women, and instead, he now apparently finds interest in Japanese women, specifically from the southern island of Okinawa. Time and time again, he has highlighted his concerns of one day killing another woman, but with no official court documentation ever being released from French authorities. Japanese authorities have no legal standing to arrest the man. He remains free to this very day. To add to his strangeness, Issei now also feels the urge to be killed and eaten. And of course, he's highlighted many times that he'd prefer to be a victim to a beautiful cannibalistic woman.
Fucking
but this
freak.
is the only thing that can truly save him from what he refers to as the beast, which currently remains dormant inside him. Although it's terrifying that
The beast that's inside of me.
Issei Sagawa is technically allowed to roam the streets of Tokyo and beyond, in more
alpha
recent
mode.
years he has suffered several illnesses and injuries, which in return have resulted in permanent damage to his nervous system. He now lives alone and requires assistance almost daily, which means you likely have nothing to fear when it comes to bumping into Issei Sagawa. You know, it's very disturbing to see Issei get away with his actions. And not that he ever will, but even if he were to be punished now in his old age, he still managed to get a good 36 years of freedom. And all in the meanwhile, Renee never managed to experience the entirety of her life.
Wait, is he dead now? Oh, he died 2 years ago. I mean, at least he's gone, but I mean, yeah, still, he lived, for the most part, a free life. That's insane, bro. I mean, I pretty much already said all I needed to say. Did all of that got no consequence at all?